I was born in New York City. I grew up in Mount Vernon. My uncle, Anton Rovinsky, was a concert pianist, settled into teaching as he grew older, and I was one of his pupils. The other most influential, and maybe more influential, was my big brother, Arthur, who collected a good many of these old recordings and instilled in me a knowledge and a fondness for early jazz. Recordings of Bix Beiderbecke. That and Benny Goodman, the swing, was my first introduction to the music. I learned how to play by listening to those records and by being guided first by my brother, then other musicians I was fortunate enough to play with as a kid, and by experience. I went to Columbia, and it was a very easy transition from being a college student in New York to being a working musician. When I was in college, a local radio station decided to have a jazz piano contest. I went down and I won the thing. The prize for that contest was 12 lessons with Teddy Wilson. He was very influential. I asked him why it was that I was playing fairly well on some days. On the next day, I might be playing very poorly. He said, "That's why you practice," which was a life lesson I've never forgotten. When I was all of 23, I went on a European tour with the Benny Goodman Sextet. This was 1950. It was a wonderful experience on my part and introduced me to a great many things that I hadn't ever taken part in before. But at the same time, what was happening in New York was that the record business was beginning to boom. There were all sorts of freelance recording opportunities, and I began to record under my own name too, solo piano things or things with little bands. And along with that, each of the networks in New York had a staff orchestra. CBS, ABC, and NBC, where I joined and stayed for 5 years. At NBC, it fell to me to learn Hammond organ. They had me doing game shows and soap operas. After I did my 5 years at NBC and went out totally freelance again, I did sign on with Arthur Godfrey as his music director, arranger, and whatnot. My activities were really beginning to split. On the one hand, there was the jazz gigs and jazz recordings. On the other hand, studio work, which could be almost anything. I relished the peculiar difference of things that I might get to do in one day, from playing soap opera or game show organ to doing a jazz recording. I liked the contrast. In the late 60s, I got interested in playing the Moog. The record company I was with at that time, they knew that I could tackle a whole new world of synthesized music. And then I got into movie scoring as another thing you did in recording studios. I did several films before I began to work for Woody Allen. The composer can bring some points of view that the director might not have thought of. You must have a meeting of the minds and a confidence in each other's approach. A solo recital, it's all up to you. You do have to have some kind of a sympathetic relationship with the audience, and I've learned enough to have that. The other stuff is frequently interesting and fun, and it gives you a sense of achievement. But it starts really, and apparently it ends that way too, with being a solo pianist.